So my name is Kaisa Raitio, and together with Annette in the work package 1, we have been looking at ways to understand government-led dialogues in Sápmi. Sápmi is the traditional territory of the indigenous Sami people that covers the northern half of Sweden. And what we are working on is developing a structural approach to understanding land use conflicts between traditional Sami reindeer herding and other competing land uses. And we have two partners in this case in work package 1, the Swedish Forest Service and Sami Drikkasjärvi, the Association of Sami Reindeer Herders in Sweden. And together with them, we decided to focus on the conflict between reindeer herding and forestry. And one of the reasons for this is that this is the sector, forestry is the sector where there is the longest history of applying corporate consultations and different dialogical tools in order to try to mitigate or resolve the conflicts between these land users. And at the same time, our partners in the program agree that these tools are inadequate and have failed to really make any significant progress in addressing the conflicts. The issues are basically the same as decades ago. So how can we make sense of this situation? And how can we make progress? So Annette and I took as a starting point for our work the fact that these land users have overlapping rights to the same land according to Swedish law. So the landowners own the land, but the reindeer herding communities have an overlapping property right according to Swedish law to that same piece of land. And so the fact that reindeer herders are also rights holders, they are also have rights to the land, not only the forest companies who own the property, is clearly a structural factor that one has to take into account when seeking to understand the dialogues and conflicts between these actors. So that's the first component of our structural approach, is a rights-based perspective, recognizing the rights of both of these actors. And because rights are regulated by law, they are nothing that emerge in local interactions, in local conflicts. We argue that these local dialogue processes need to be understood in their governing context. So we need a systemic perspective looking at how forestry and the dialogue processes themselves are being regulated. And here we've discovered that the Swedish Forestry Act that steers these dialogues does not recognize reindeer herding as a right. So reindeer herding right is invisible from the regulatory system regulating these dialogues. Which leads us to the third component of our structural approach, looking at the structural causes of the conflict and putting them up front when trying to understand the conflict and power dynamics that then are visible on the local scale. And our agonistic take on this means that understanding these structural causes of the conflict that come from the Forestry Act and recognizing them is absolutely central for understanding what's going on at the moment, but also needs to be the starting point for any dialogues or any discussions on how to make future dialogue processes more meaningful and legitimate for that right holder whose rights are not being visible at the moment in these processes and in their regulation. So the key themes and outputs that we are working on at the moment to sort of develop this analytical framework and to test it. The overall question is, how does a structural perspective affect the perception of good dialogue? If there are two parallel rights holders, what does that mean for what good dialogue is? And what does it mean for good dialogue if one of these rights holders is not recognized as a rights holder in the regulations of forestry? We have a master's thesis student writing a thesis and a report on looking more closely at the limits of the localized current solutions in addressing structural conflicts. So what exactly are the issues that these localized conflict dialogue processes cannot address? We have another master thesis student looking at the role of the actors' perceptions of justice or injustice in the current situation and how those affect their understanding of what a good dialogue process is. We have also been commissioned by the SSR, Sápmi reindeer, to do a report that they will be submitting to the Swedish government on analyzing specifically the problems related to Sveaskog, so the government-owned company and government-controlled land, and the structural causes of the conflict in impairing constructive dialogue between the government-owned company and the reindeer herding communities. And finally, we've written this opinion piece here in the picture, highlighting the role of state passiveness or inaction as the cause for what we see as a destructive conflict escalation. And this is really where we see the social relevance of our work, is in sort of drawing attention to the lack of rights-based dialogues and the consequences of this for destructive conflict dynamics. When the actors would want to have government-led dialogues on their rights, but this is not happening, they go to courts and build strategic alliances, for instance, with the environmental movements, and go to the markets. And these are logical responses to the situation, and there is nothing peculiar about this from an agonistic perspective. However, the state passiveness is leading to very polarized situations locally, with escalating hate speech towards the Sámi communities. And here in the picture, you can see a reindeer that was killed by people attempting to silence those Sámi communities who are fighting for their rights to actually be recognized, not only on paper, but also in practice. And this is an unsustainable situation for all the actors. And we hope that our work can contribute to understanding what rights-based dialogues could look like. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.